Welcome back to Walk with TFB. Tim Bryson here, and as y'all know, I'm a Black millennial who is eager to have unfiltered conversation with authentic people centered on international education, global sport, and Black culture. Today's episode is another phenomenal episode, one that I've been looking forward to for a very long time, at least a couple months now. As we're going back across the pond and talking to a friend, colleague, and quite honestly, a global leader in the space, thinking about athlete recruitment and internationalization. But I'm going to be quiet and introduce, and y'all help me welcome Sam Whiteside to the podcast. Sam, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm good, Tim. It's really good to see you again. Obviously, been a few months since we were together in California back in late September, and like you, I've been looking forward to catching up and talking with you today, and obviously all your subscribers, your listeners, and people who are interested in learning about what we're doing collaboratively across the world, across this sphere of influence in sport and education.
For sure, man. And I'm not gonna lie, you heard it in our little prep prior to pressing record. The hardest thing about prepping for this interview was learning how to pronounce the university. So it's University of Central Lancashire. Is that correct?
Yeah, so one of those things, obviously, in the UK, you guys have all your states, and the way we're broken down here in the UK, because obviously we're a lot smaller. I think, the UK as a whole is probably about the size of Florida.
Wow.
So our kind of administration is broken down into counties, and we
Mm,
are the sort of largest education provider for the county of Lancashire in the northwest of England. And Preston is our main city, where our main campus is and where we were founded almost 200 years ago.
wow.
1828 is when we were established, and so Preston pretty much is at the center of the county, hence the name University of Central
Wow.
Lancashire. The interesting thing is, Tim, we are actually our name is going to slightly change this year to kind of best reflect how important we are in the northwest of the UK, and we will
Mhm.
drop the central and become the University of Lancashire in
Wow.
September. So it's a great time for us. It doesn't change anything in terms of what we do and what we offer, but it's a real kind of testament to our regional commitment as a very large higher education institution over here in the UK.
I love that. Kind of foreboding too in regards to how you continue to rebrand and stay ahead of the curve, honestly, which we'll get to in segment two. But segment one, Sam, I think is important before we jump into all the great things happening at your uni, as y'all say over there. It was really important to learn more about you and your story. So I'm interested in our listeners are interested in learning more about you, your career journey, but also your current role at Central Lancashire.
Yeah, so really, it's a strange journey for me coming to higher education. A lot of my colleagues that I work with have sort of always been in it or have come to it quite early in their professional careers. I've come to it in the sort of post-pandemic world. I originally, for a decade, worked on international cruise ships, very well traveled across the world, something that I thoroughly enjoyed in tourism. And obviously, as we all were aware during the COVID-19 pandemic, international travel in particular, was curtailed for a period. So I found myself at a bit of a loose end, and was very fortunate to get involved in kind of college counseling, as you would call it over in the States, with local high school students here in the UK going on to their next steps. And that led me, within sort of 9 months of doing that counseling, which was all done virtually because it was COVID, to the University of Central Lancashire, where I started off in admissions. Actually, interestingly, in terms of sport, I was the senior international admissions officer for our soccer academy partner that we have, which I still work with today as part of my current role. And my current role, which I've been doing for the last few years, is regional manager covering the regions of the Americas. So both North and South America, the area of Southeast Asia, and overseeing UK international and also European recruitment. So I have quite a large remit. Um, and then just kind of obviously professional career education wise, I studied here in the UK, undergraduate and master's degrees in history from the University of Royal Holloway, which is part of the University of London system. Um, and yeah, it's been a very interesting journey for me in terms of changing from being someone involved in travel and tourism to now education. But what I kind of enjoy with what I do, you and I met, as I said, at the beginning over in Southern California back in September. I'm able to travel in this job, which kind of is a passion of mine to be out there. I'm also able to be in front of people. I was frontline customer services on board the ships, so always kind of interacting with people. I'm interacting with people on a day-to-day basis, whether it be colleagues like yourself who are involved in the sector, talking to college counselors, guidance counselors, students, parents, carers, kind of supporting people on that journey. And it's something that I thoroughly enjoy. Really just relationship building, kind of helping people on that kind of journey. And yeah, it's been, last few years been really, really enjoyable and successful. And I know that this year, particularly, I've got some really big plans this year, traveling around the world and coming over to the US and Canada a few times as well to visit colleges and talk to student athletes. And yeah, it's an exciting time for what we're doing at the university.
It's super exciting. And I think one thing, at least for me, being based in the United States, of course, and learning more about just global work outside of North America, this role, regional manager, even global engagement, sometimes it's called, right, international recruitment. For a lot of folks in the United States who aren't in it, like in it, they have no clue what that means or what y'all do. Could you just take a couple minutes and describe like what does it mean to be a regional manager for those different regions, of course, and uniquely like what responsibility do you have as it relates to your responsibility to the university.
Sure, yeah. So if I was kind of comparing it to a role that would be available in the US, it's a college recruiter. So essentially, my responsibility to the university is within those regions. So let's take, for example, the Americas, to work with agencies or work with counselors, colleges, to talk and meet with students who are interested in pursuing an international education experience, whether that be for their first degree as a bachelor or whether they're considering going on to grad school. And I work with those students. I sort of nurture them through the process, talk to them about the university, introduce them to what studying in the UK might look like for them, go through our entry requirements, guiding students on, what is it that you need at school? What type of GPA are we looking for? What APs might you need to take? Have you got an SAT? What experiences have you had? And kind of nurturing them like a college a recruiter would do from, for example, when we've been together in San Diego, University of San Diego will have their college recruiters who will go out to high schools and kind of talk to students about what they can do there. That's essentially what I do. I just do it on a very large international scale, covering those regions. And it's really the whole package, the whole journey from, first meeting students to welcoming them to campus as enrolled students, and then following their journey through our university to their graduation and kind of keeping in touch with them as well, seeing how they're getting on, using their experiences to kind of help us inform future students as well. And we have quite a lot of students that we build these relationships with to act as student ambassadors for us. So it's quite a broad responsibility. I mean, that's the most essential responsibility, is bringing students in as enrolled students to the university. And then it's really that promotion of the university brand, making people aware of us. What are our strengths? We look at the US as a market. There are, I think, 3,000-4,000 colleges. We're a
Mhm.
small island. We've got about 130, 140. So how do we make the University of Central Lancashire stand out amongst all of that, noise, let's call it that, of different colleges and
Man,
counselors saying, come to us and we're good for this and we're good for that. So it's a little bit of juggling on that, but I'm very passionate about what our university stands for, and I think we love, particularly me, I love going out and giving a good account of what we stand for. And we do quite well in these particular regions, and we do have, good sizes of students coming from places like the US or Canada in the Americas, and being a really big part of our community. And that's my responsibility.
super dope, man. Segment two, and we're gonna stay on this thread, if you will. So for folks who are listening to this podcast episode, are definitely gonna check out more about Central Lancashire. But just starting out right now, just give us an overview of your uni, right? Like, where is it geographically? Someone talking to you, what's like the first couple of things you say that are your strengths or highlights of the uni itself. But just give us an overview of Central Lancashire.
Sure. So um, if I was doing like a really short elevator pitch that I could then come and expand on. We're one of the largest UK universities, home to over 100 different nationalities of international student, 10 academic schools with nearly 200 years of history, producing amazingly employable graduates in a number of, industry-ready careers. To kind of expand on that, historically, as I previously mentioned, we were founded in 1828. For me, we've always been a university or a college that has prided itself on vocational teaching. To translate that maybe for your audience, that's practical skill based learning. So, we're not Oxford or Cambridge, in terms of, it's not all about being book smart. It's how competent are you in practical settings. And we give students amazing experiences when it comes to being able to do placements or co-ops, as you would call them, alongside your studies, and really building up your resume, working with amazing technology, so the latest equipment, so that when you're then going out into the market looking for your first job, you can demonstrate, from our university, you've kind of got all these skills. We are a fairly large university. So, some of the largest universities in the US, I know Arizona State and places like that, probably 50,000 or so. On our main campus in the city of Preston, which is in the northwest of England, if people are not familiar with the name Preston, I'm quite positive they'd be familiar with Manchester or Liverpool, two big cities.
Yep.
We're really kind of in a triangle with those two. So we're kind of the pinnacle of the triangle, the top of the triangle, if it so to speak. And Manchester is to the southeast of us, and Liverpool is to the southwest of us, both about 45 minutes by train. So within sort of 30 to 40 miles of Preston. So very close. In the northwest. I always say to him, actually, it's a personal opinion. I personally think we're the best located student city in the country, because we're up in the northwest, but we're on the main western train line that connects Edinburgh in Scotland with London. And we're pretty much equidistant between the two. So we're about 2 hours, 10 minutes by direct fast train to London, and about 2.5 hours to Edinburgh.
Oh,
But we're actually ranked as the most affordable university in the UK. So, students coming over really get great value for money in terms of accommodation, in terms of their fees that they're paying. We have amazing scholarships that we offer. We're talking millions of pounds, millions of dollars every year given by us to, competent students based on excellence and merit to come and study with us. And they can still then appreciate the UK. I think particularly for students coming from the US overseas to the UK, it's about having that experience of coming to a different country and experiencing it. We're right in the middle, so you can really expand yourself out and about. We're also classed as within the sort of top 20 best student cities in the UK. That's based on kind of all these different living metrics. So, what it costs to do your grocery shopping, what it costs to go out for we'd say a pint, a beer, or go for a drink in town or grab a coffee. What you're paying to go to the gym and keep fit, what your travel costs are. And I think the beauty about us is we're a self-contained campus. So you live on campus. We have accommodation for students, guaranteed for international students in the first year. So there is a room there for them. Everything then is walkable within 5 to 10 minutes. Students don't have to worry about, taking the bus or needing a car or kind of personal transport to get
wow.
around. We're right in the center of the city with all of those amenities: cinemas, bowling alleys, nightclubs, bars, shops, everything's there. And then the train station right down the road from campus that can get you to Manchester, London, Liverpool, and all these places. So I think we have I always say it, I've moved up here to the Northwest. I'm not originally from this area. And I've kind of really, made this an amazing home. And I think people who come here would find that it's very college town-esque, Preston, because
Mhm.
it's quite compact and small. But I think a really easy city to settle into and, find your way around and not kind of get overwhelmed.
Wow, you sold me. You sold me in whatever it was, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, for sure. But I know as you're going around to these different regions, right, and talking to prospective students, they do have questions. They still have questions. I'm sure about, cost, of course, maybe student life. So could you just shed some light in regards to what are some of the thematic questions that students are asking, at least more recently, in regards to studying at Central Lancashire?
Yeah, definitely. I think students are or have recently been kind of asking me about what the community life is like at our university. And I'd say that here in the United Kingdom in general, there is an amazing culture and balance between, being academically strong and, focusing on your academics and enjoying the experience and there not being that pressure. So we have a very active students union, run by students, organized by students, and that's everything from your what you would in the US term as clubs. We call them societies. So that's everything from your kind of general interest groups to thematic subject specialist organizations. So we have a school of medicine, and there are quite a lot of special interest groups around orthopedics or around pediatrics and things like that that bring in network speakers, and it's kind of organized by the students. And then obviously we have the sports. And we have both our kind of competitive elite level sports where you are, performing and competing against other universities from around the UK in our league system that is organized across all the different universities. And then also what you would call club sport, a more social base where you can meet new people, you can maybe try a completely new sport, and there not be that intense pressure to be an excelling competitor. You can go into a sport that you may never have tried before, and it's your first exposure to it, and you can become a part of a community, and that really is something that enhances the student experience when they come to the UK, and particularly for us, it's something that we really promote.
Yeah, I want to stay on that because I think sport, even shoot, the last 5, 10 years, if not, definitely 20, has really grown in regards to what the purpose of sport is, what it's not. But I think just from my own experience, looking at what the UK is doing, UK unis in particular, y'all are really showing that sport cannot just be, fun, but also a form of community building at these different institutions across the country. So I would love for you to share just more about like what is the role of sport at Central Lancashire, particularly thinking about obviously participation, which you've already mentioned, but also beginning to think about how sport may influence internationalization strategy. I mean, your current role again serving those different regions around the world.
Yeah, so we have, I think, somewhere in the region of 70 sports clubs at the university, and sort of around 20 to 30 of those are what we'd class as like competitive programs. Um, I work quite closely with a few of those teams in kind of promotion. So I've been working quite a lot recently with our American football team. And I think for me, what we're aiming to do at the university is grow our sports so that we are increasing our exposure within the leagues. So potted kind of set up, you guys in the US have your different divisions of sort of NCAA and other organizations that organize your competitive system. Here in the UK, we have something that's known as British Universities and Colleges Sports, shorthand Bucks that I'll refer to. So in Bucks leagues, we split it into different divisions and you want to work up the divisions. That then obviously gives you greater exposure. You can attract better players. Kind of similar to, I guess, what NCAA programs want to do. They want to attract the best high school talent. The difference here in the UK is there's not that kind of active, let's say, recruitment of elite level athletes. There's not the same scholarship provision because we don't have the same financial input that you do in the US when it comes to TV rights deals and merchandise and sponsorship. It's all self-generated here in the UK. Clubs run themselves at universities, supported by the university, but the students are paying to play because they want to do a sport. So that then, as you get better, as your program becomes better and you go up the leagues, you're hopefully going to attract better people. Our American football team, for example, head coach of our American football team is the current quarterbacks coach of the Great Britain national team. He's then been able to bring in students from different international programs. We're currently looking at exploring in the US with different colleges how we can attract high caliber US students who may not have been able to meet the NCAA criteria, but would definitely be able to support our development here. That then obviously attracts more people, and I think that's where the internationalization of it comes in. Tim, is that you grow a program, you promote a program, you bring in this talent, you can attract better people, and you can increase up the leagues. As I say, it's very different in the US because of that sponsorship and funding, but essentially the students are a key component here in the UK of improving the success. I'm just there really to help facilitate with the recruitment, because the students, obviously, that's not their role to do. They're not there to go out and recruit people. They're there to study and play.
I mean, so I'm glad you brought that up, the piece about those who may not be academically eligible to compete their first year in the US, right? I think that's a great example of what the future of internationalization in sport could definitely look like. But you're definitely someone, at least in again, conversation back in September, October, but ongoing conversation as well. You're very familiar with the US sport system and culture, which is pretty dope to be able to, have conversation with you about. So I'm curious to learn more about, like, as you're seeing what's happening, whether it be at the NCAA level, even professional sport level, whether it be international games or competitions, etc. And what trends you foresee happening as it relates to UK US exchange or just mobility in general, looking ahead.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've spoken about at the university is how we could collaborate with colleges in the US or Canada to, in effect, do competitive exchange. What does that look like? So we have exchange partners, like many universities do, where students will go and do a semester abroad. When I was studying at Royal Holloway, I actually played American football. It was my first exposure to American football. At the time, American football has grown exponentially here in the UK. You know, back when I was at university, started in 2006. Still popular, and it'd been popular obviously since you're going back to players like the Fridge and stuff like that, and the Chicago Bears and the Miami Dolphins and Dan Marino, but
Yep.
it wasn't really something that was very well structured. And that's just exploded, especially with the NFL games that come to the UK. So we had American students that had come on semester abroad. So we have these exchange agreements, right? I've been looking at with our director of sport how we could take some of our performance sports teams over to some of our exchange partners. So we partner with universities in Missouri, we partner with universities in New York State, we partner with universities in Connecticut. We could take over some of our elite sports teams, learn from the coaches, our counterparts over at the colleges,
Hmm.
share best practice, compete, have
Hmm.
scrimmage. If we take our American football team as an example, we could take our American football team over, get our guys and girls, because by the way, here in the UK, NFL league is, or the American Football League in the UK is co-ed. So we have female players on our male team.
Wow.
It's not defined. So how can we learn from their experiences over in the US, but also then invite them to come over to the UK and do that on a kind of biannual, 1 year we're coming to the US, 1 year the US college is coming to us. That exchange, that fostering of relationships, how can we then help? Because we may be able to bring things over, obviously in the UK, things like soccer, cricket,
Hmm.
rugby. US colleges probably might be good grounds to really build up those sports. And, we
Hmm.
excel in some of those areas, particularly for us. We excel at soccer and we excel at rugby league, one of the codes of rugby. And we would learn from the softball team and we would learn from the lacrosse team and the American football team. So I think that's something that, I'm definitely working on at the moment as a kind of initiative. And I think how you don't see that so much. You always see academic exchange,
Hmm.
professors come over and they teach for a bit, students come over and they learn for a bit. But what about sport? Where are we doing the competitive nature of playing and training together and kind of learning those best practices? That's something that I'm really passionate about.
You could tell, man, just by the tone of your voice, but also the ideas that you just mentioned on this show. But I'm also curious to learn more about, is this something that is a shared sentiment across the country? Again, just speaking, of course, broadly. Like, are there unis talking about this, brainstorming about this? Are you like out by yourself currently leading the way? Thinking like, where does this sit, I guess, in market, right? I guess in the industry over in
Yeah.
the UK, thinking about internationalization in sport in this context.
I think it depends. I mean, you know similar people to me, and there's a few of my colleagues, or I call them friends really, that have worked in the sector and have kind of branched out and set up their own businesses doing sort of student athlete recruitment or student
Hmm.
athlete lead generation. And we have very similar ideas, and we've had a lot of time to talk about it, and we've done filming and stuff. I think the interesting thing in the UK, what's very different to US colleges is, we're more restricted when it comes to our finances and our ability to kind of
Sure.
fund these things. So people might like ideas, but do they have the backing and the financial backing? And it's something that I'm very lucky with, that I have the kind of autonomy to develop these ideas. I've got a very supportive team at the University of Central Lancashire, and I think to kind of segue slightly back
Mhm.
to where students would be very welcome. Us, we pride ourselves on the support structure we have, everything from academic support to mental health provision. We're top 3 university in the UK for our mental health provision for students, financial support. Any kind of hardship that they face, there's a lot of support structure in place, and I have that same. From a professional standpoint, I'm really well supported by the hierarchy. My colleagues within my team, there's a lot of collaboration. So I think we're a university that's very forward thinking, looking
Mhm.
towards the future and how we can kind of really change things. And I think, yeah, I definitely have colleagues across the sector here in the UK that kind of share those ideas, and it may be something that we work on together. But sometimes, Tim, people have got to blaze a trail. I'm more than
Mhm.
happy to kind of start
Mhm.
that off, and you never know, it might become a thing of the future that we're all kind of talking about and doing.
I think it's gonna be sooner than later, my friend. I think another way that you're trailblazing in your leadership is thinking about sport as a means for career preparation or career readiness, workforce preparation. And so prior to hitting record, you shared some thoughts in regards to how sport can be used as an avenue for, careers and employment. So we'd love for you to share more about that. I think it's super important and definitely something that we can all learn from.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned before how we're a very proactive university when it comes to employability and giving people the skills when they're on their course that are demonstrable on their resumes. Um, and I think for me, when you look at internationalization, you look at the US as a great example. Next few years, some amazing sporting activities taking place. FIFA Men's Soccer World Cup 2026 across Mexico, US, and Canada. Obviously, 2028, the Olympics, Summer Olympics in LA. The economic commercial benefits of these large scale sporting events to so many different career avenues, you know, and just in general, how technology is advancing and the advent of social media. And, there's so many things where you look at how a student from, let's say, the US could come to the UK, could compete as a student athlete, but get themselves a tangible bachelor or, graduate degree. Obviously, one of the benefits of that for people who aren't aware, most degrees here, 3 years for a bachelor, 1 year for a grad degree. So you're saving on time, you're saving on tuition, your fees, your career ready quicker than your counterparts who would be studying at college back home in the US to get experience locally. So one of the things in the UK, again, we're small as a nation. Sport is at the heart of so many local communities here, whether it be soccer, whether it be rugby, whether it be cricket, American football now, tennis in the summer, so many different sports. It's likely that most universities have links into local sports teams, even national, international professional teams. So for us, for example, our local team in soccer is Preston North End, but we have ties to Manchester City, ties to Everton, ties to Blackburn Rovers for our women's soccer players. These are professional, high performing teams and historical teams as well. And it's not students playing for those teams. We're talking about business students or hospitality students or journalism students or law students who are able to get co-ops and go and do internships at these places, build up their resume. How advantageous would that be then going back to the US in 2026 for a summer and supporting in the logistics of the Men's World Cup, working in hotels, working in hospitality, working in ticket sales, so many different careers. You have to kind of look at it broadly. And I think part of that, Tim, comes from my previous experience going back when I worked on cruise ships. I do some kind of outreach work with local colleges and colleagues in the kind of career counseling field. And I go in and talk to students about careers in travel. And I always say to them, look, I worked on a cruise ship. There is no job advert that just says cruise ship job. On a cruise ship is a mini city. It has everything from doctors, nurses, chefs. It has financial experts who are dealing with all of the cash flow, all of the credit card payments and transactions. It has auditors. It has housekeeping staff. It has engineers. It has environmental officers. It has the captain. It has people who are dealing in sales, in fine art, in jewelry, in cosmetics, the spa staff, the hairdressers, the masseuses, the personal trainers. The amount of staff on that cruise ship is incredible. And you look at these big sporting events like a World Cup, like an Olympics, think of the amount of different job roles are required to support such an event. And I think that's where someone who is passionate about sport can come to the UK or, do a degree in so many different avenues, play sport, have a passion for wanting to be involved in sport in some way, but maybe doesn't have the capability of going on to a professional career and still perform an amazing job role within a sporting setting. And I think that's something that's really key for me.
Again, this is good. It's good for a number of reasons. I think the two that I mentioned, again, sport and internationalization being a trending, I think you can call it, I guess, a hot topic right now, but also just global career readiness, which I think more universities around the world are beginning to spend more time thinking about, but also trying to put metrics together to measure, which I know, because again, prospective college students, whether it be undergrad or postgrad study, are looking at those numbers, when they're choosing a university.
Yeah, and I think it's one of our selling points. You mentioned, talking about what do we talk about when we're talking about our university. To say to a student who might come along and say, I want to do journalism,
Hmm.
and to say, right, well, recently our journalism students did an internship at Manchester City, supporting writing the program reports and the match reports for the website. I mean, that what a selling point! Four
Yep.
time, they've been Premier League soccer champions the last 4 years in a row. Recently won the treble. One of the greatest football managers of all time. Currently their coach. To have that on your resume, even if it's a 1 week internship or a couple of days, shadowing, how amazing is that? And you could be someone who's, an amazing softball player at the same time playing on our softball team. Do you know what I mean? So
That's a good
I
point.
think there's so many things there that are sellable. And it's not just us. If you look at so many colleges, universities around the country, as I said before, they will have links into local sports teams and professional sports teams, across the UK. Sport forms a huge part, like it does in the US, culturally in this country, and many countries. I'm not just want to highlight the UK here. If you look at Australia, or you look at Southeast Asia, for example, the Middle East. There's so many countries around the world where sport is such an important part. India with cricket, such a huge
Hmm.
part of the culture.
Hmm.
How can you benefit from those experiences but take it back home into career readiness? And I think that's key in this. And I don't want to kind of downplay students' opportunities to go professional, but I think when you look at the percentages, always,
Exactly.
what's the percentage of students that go on to make it in the NFL? Same
Mhm.
here in the UK. The percentage of people that go on to play for Manchester United, or top elite level teams, it's fractional. I mean, I think it's in the single digit percent, even if not the 0.0 something percent.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
how can you take a love of sport where especially in the US, where sometimes I feel that high school students maybe are conditioned in a completely different way to what we are here. You might play
Hmm.
American football or baseball or basketball, like you did, Tim. I know we spoke about
Yeah.
sports,
Yeah.
playing it from an early age. It's drilled into you. You're coached in an amazing way. Your professionalism from an early age is phenomenal. Strength and conditioning training. You are pure athletes, and you get to 17, 18. My stepsister is an example. She was number 2 or 3 in the state of Missouri. She's American.
Hmm.
She was number 2 or 3 in the state of Missouri for platform diving, free diving. And like that, she had an accident, broke her leg. That was her opportunity to be elite, get elite scholarship status to go in state college. She is studying here at the University of Central Lancashire because I convinced her that, guess what? You can still come over, you can still be involved in sport, you can still be active,
Oh,
but how about considering that internationalization of you? And I use this term, Tim, called international fluency.
I like that.
It's international fluency for me. So put yourself in this picture. You go to a college in the US, and this is not to downplay any college education at all in the US. It's just comparatively how I kind of see it.
Hmm.
You go to what you know in the US, in state, 4 year degree. You graduate. You then go to a job interview, and you're sat there next to a US student, same as you, same age as you, same high school graduating year as you, that's gone to the UK, done 3 year bachelor, 1 year grad school, is now sat there next to you as your competition. I
Hmm.
would bet my life that that student who's gone overseas, taken that challenge out of their comfort zone, different standard of education, different style. I'm not saying it's better, I'm not saying it's worse, it's just
Hmm.
different.
Hmm.
How do they appeal to the employer at that point? I think they stand out in a very different way. I'm not saying that they will get the job over them, but I think it becomes a very interesting conversation there. You got to look at all the other metrics, as I mentioned previously: lower cost of tuition, shorter time to graduate, more opportunity to gain grad school careers. A lot of careers that you can't necessarily go into straight out of high school, you can here. So for example, at our university, you can come and do medicine straight away out of high school. You can come and do veterinary science straight out of high school, law
Right.
straight out of high school. So you can be in these high performing professional pathway careers straight from high school with good grades, 3, 4, 5 years back home, earning good wages. I know in America, doctors revered in the medical profession,
Hmm. Hmm.
vets, very, lawyers, solicitors, barristers, whatever. So it's for me, it's that international fluency. And I think, you could come and you could still compete over here, not at the high pressure. We have to make it very clear of what the UK position is when it comes to college sport. It's great fun. I did American football, but I also did squash. I actually did cheerleading as well because I wanted to do a
Wow.
bit of acrobatics, and we didn't have a gymnastics team. So you can try different things. You can be involved at kind of a extensive level or just a kind of toe in the water level. Really enjoy yourself, but come out with an amazing degree, amazing friendships,
Damn.
international friends, because as I said before, we've got 100 different nationalities, about 6,000 international students at our university. So you could be, rooming with people from Nigeria, from Thailand, from Saudi Arabia, from Brazil. We've got students from all over. Just the experience at such a young age to take home with you. How does that benefit you long term? I think there are so many positives to it under the kind of wraparound of sport, and playing and competing in sport.
No, 1000%, bro. Yeah, my mouth is just on the floor, honestly, because I genuinely, I don't know if I would have done it, truthfully, but I wish I knew this was even an outlet, right? Or an opportunity coming out of high school, let alone going into postgrad or master's here in the United States.
Yeah, and I think, do you know what? You asked me before about type of conversations I have with students. Previously in the second segment, I've had that conversation with a few students who have since come and studied with us
Yep.
from the US, like saying the same thing to me and how grateful they are to be having that conversation because they're sitting there going, I didn't even know that this was a thing. Like
No.
I had a student last year
No.
who had given up on playing basketball at college. He was like, yeah, I just thought it was not going to happen for me. Like, I'm good, but I'm not amazing. Like, I was never going to get. And I was like, you can come play here. We're like crying out for basketball players. It's one of our focal sports.
Yeah.
Let's put you forward for scholarship. He got gold scholarship, which is a decent financial package. And he's playing locally as well for the city team. Saw some
Wow.
pictures of him the other day on their social media. So he's playing for us. He's playing for the city team. And I saw him just before Christmas, and I was like, "How's it going?" And he's like, "Man, I just love it. Like, really enjoying it." So, I think there is that kind
Mm.
of attitude, like there's not enough understanding that there is this opportunity. And it's not for everybody. It's a big undertaking, leaving home and traveling, thousands of miles the other side of the world. But one of the things I say to a lot of the students, and again, just thinking back about it, when students are asking me about culture, what's the culture like? What's settling in like? And I kind of use this kind of story. My dad moved to America when I was 12, 13 years old. He's been in the States since 2001. And I started traveling to America to stay with him in the holidays. And, I was coming over and you guys had movies in the cinema that were not no like or movies on DVD that weren't even in the cinema in the UK, TV shows that were not on TV for 6 months, music that was coming out. You fast, Reese's chocolate was unheard of in the UK, right? Unless you
Yeah.
traveled to the States. And then, Monday or yesterday, actually, I'm sat there and I like wrestling, right? So I'm a fan of WWE. And I watched the launch of WWE's Monday Night Raw on Netflix.
Netflix, yep.
And, both Triple H and The Rock were saying, like, well, I think The Rock said, Dwayne The Rock Johnson said, when I was a kid and I was traveling around wrestling, I could only watch it if I bought a ticket or if I watched it on Saturday morning. And now we're in however many households live on Netflix. And that for me is the same with the culture. So if you're an American student coming to study in the UK now, you've got your, streaming services for music and for all of your movies, and so you can be up to date with the latest shows. Whatever you're a fan of from back in the US, you can watch here. We have all the NFL on telly here in the
Hmm.
UK. They come to the UK, for the NFL games. Taylor Swift just did her massive Eras tour in like Liverpool, just down the road from Preston. We had, students and staff going to see Taylor Swift. There's so much going on concert-wise, music, movies, art, and you go into the supermarkets now and you'll get all of those American treats are there. So I say to students all the time, I'm like, it was so different, and it kind of makes me sound old, and I don't want to come across as old because I'm not yet 40, but it's one of them where I'm like, guys, you will be totally fine. And
Yeah.
obviously, with the advent of social media, being in contact with your families, like when I worked on the cruise ships, it was hard. I might go months without being able to speak to people because you couldn't get Wi-Fi internet and stuff like that. Now it's everywhere, and also, another plug for us, it's free on campus. So, it's not like you need to come over here and pay for a huge phone plan. You're going to have Wi-Fi on the whole campus, in your dorm room, in your lecture theaters, across the whole site. So you can always be in contact with family at home.
Wow.
So you're definitely connected. You're definitely, I think, going to settle. And we'd love to have more.
Yeah, I mean, it's two things that you said that stuck out to me. I think the first one being y'all's unique and explicit focus on career readiness for international students. Because that international athletes in particular, that's something that is so needed here in the United States. Because we don't do a good job. NCAA does not do a great job. Institutions are not doing a great job of preparing international athletes to return home or to a third country whatsoever, which is that's an own podcast episode. But the second thing you mentioned in regards to Netflix, I think Netflix diving into sports is going to change the game completely.
Mhm.
Especially, I saw obviously WWE Women's World Cup 27, 31. I saw, and
Yeah.
the access to be able to watch it right in real time, I think it's
Yeah,
gonna be
well,
wild.
and the funny thing is, here in the UK on Christmas Day, we don't have sport on Christmas Day,
Mhm.
as in, there's no games or anything. They always take place on the following day, which is called Boxing Day in the
That's
UK,
a
which
day. Yep.
you guys don't have that.
Yep.
But on Christmas Day, I sat there in the afternoon and watched the Pittsburgh Kansas game because it was on
Hmm.
Netflix here in the UK, right?
Hmm.
And previously
Hmm.
we'd never have that opportunity, right?
Exactly.
Um, Amazon
Damn.
Amazon has I think it has the French Open tennis. It's Amazon Prime has French Open tennis here in the UK. So there's so many different avenues now. Here in the UK, and I think in the US as well, MLS, Major League Soccer, that's on Apple TV.
Apple TV,
So
yeah.
if I wanted to, I could buy the Apple TV MLS pass and watch MLS games wherever I was in the world. So
Mm.
yeah, you're right with the streaming side of things. There's a lot of scope there, and I think that's where we're trying. If you look at UK universities, uh, Bucks does have a setup now where it is looking at recording a lot more games and kind of getting our students out there so people can
Mm.
watch, not from a necessarily even a commercial standpoint. If you've got international students playing and their parents are back home in
Gosh.
in
Yep.
California, like you want to watch, right? And
Yep.
I know you shared for me recently a LinkedIn post. Our American football team did live stream their last home game before the holidays, before the festive break, um, on YouTube. Our own American football team did, and I posted about it on LinkedIn because I was like, look, okay, it's not LSU versus Alabama or major teams like that, but if you're someone that likes football, and you're just interested, and you're not doing anything of a Sunday afternoon, or for you guys Sunday morning, and you're kind of curious about how American football is played in the UK, our guys were streaming it, at no cost to anybody. So
That's wild.
we are trying and definitely looking at those ways that we can utilize social media at getting our teams out there. And I think that's something you'll see from a UK university sport basis, probably as a long-term development, is that kind of social media streaming side.
Mm. Yeah, it's wide open, man. And as we close this episode out, a couple more questions I want to make sure that we get to. The one being really probably a major question for those prospective athletes who want to come compete at Central Lancashire. How do they get in contact with you? Where do they go? You just walk us through like the process at a higher level, and again, I'm sure they'll contact you via email or social afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. So we're pretty easy to find. on any kind of search engine. You can type University of Central Lancashire. Our website at the moment is www.uclan.ac.uk. We have a dedicated international student page, and we actually have dedicated country-specific pages. So for those in the US, for example, we have a page dedicated to our US students who are interested. On there, there's testimonials from our current US students. We actually have a great video testimonial from one of our student athletes from the US, a soccer player, Dan, who's studied with us at undergrad level, who's gone on to do his master's level currently and has been doing an internship with a soccer team here in the UK. He's a business major, so he's a great advocate that you can kind of view, not just read, but he's been interviewed, he's on film talking about that experience. We break down all of our entry requirements, and you'll find on there my specific details. So for any students interested, any counselors interested, I'm the go-to person. I'm the person that will work with you, kind of coach you through the application process. All of our applications are done online in a pretty simple portal system where you upload any kind of supporting documents and things like that. But I can do one-to-one sessions, that last sort of 30 minutes and kind of talk about the university a bit more and provide that sort of extra guidance. We have a lot of support when it comes to federal aid. So one of the things that students might not be familiar with is that FAFSA loans can be utilized to pay for study here in the UK. So you can use your federal aid allowance. We have a dedicated US loans team that support you in that process of getting all your paperwork in place for applying to FAFSA. We also accept many different types of private loans. So very familiar in the US with things like the Sallie Mae system, the Earnest system, Veterans Association or Veterans Affairs funding. So you don't have to again necessarily be worried and think it's out of my reach because of finances. We do accept all the types of federal aid that you could use for your local US-based colleges, and again, we provide the guidance on that.
Love that, and I'll be sure to include that in the description of this podcast episode. Segment 3, and really our last question, Sam. I guess I got 2 questions, but how can our community best support you, Central Lancashire, and the work that you're doing globally?
I think for me, Tim, you do loads already for me. You've always been there to kind of answer any questions I have or support me when it's been asked. I do a lot of posts on LinkedIn. So if anybody does want to find me, I am very active on LinkedIn. Do quite a few sort of shout outs and posts about what we're doing sporting wise. We're very soon about to launch a brand new sports brochure that highlights all of our elite sport and what sport looks like at the university. We're currently in the midst of a big sports marketing campaign as well. So any kind of sharing of that from your community, kind of feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll kind of signpost you to where those kind of links and assets are. And, it'd be great to get the kind of word out about what our student athletes have been doing and how sport is, a key part of our university development.
Awesome. The last question, what are you looking forward to? Like, what excites you about the future of sport, whether it be sport in the UK, sport in the US, global sport at Central Lancashire? What are you excited about?
So, I mean, I'm a fan of so many different sports, Tim. Obviously, being English, football, soccer, as you guys call it, it's my main passion. Live it, breathe it, watch it. Do fantasy football.
Mm.
It's heartbreaking at times
Yeah.
because you go through the ups and downs. But immediately when it comes to things like soccer, it's the Premier League and then the World Cup for England next year. And if we can do better, when it comes to kind of local with what we're doing with the university, things I'm really excited about. I mentioned sort of right at the beginning of this, been working with our American football team, really looking forward to seeing where we go with our American football program because we've dominated our division this year. We're looking to move up divisions into the kind of more premier, what we'd call the kind of premier division
Mhm.
here in the UK, how we can support that team in growing. What other focal sports kind of we can develop. I work very closely with our basketball coaches. Again, we want to push. We want to get better. We want to get our basketball team
Mhm.
higher up the divisions and attract more talent and more players. So I'm really excited for how that looks. I'll be traveling out to the US in February, visiting a few colleges and talking to students. So I'm excited to get on the road again, back out over to the States and kind of engaging with those student athletes and from a personal side with you, Tim, it's continuing to work closely with you, kind of build on this momentum that we've got with internationalization of sport, and
Mhm.
seeing who else we can bring to the table.
Yes.
I think it's a very exciting space, and we've shared in that journey a little bit, and I'm really excited to continue doing that.
I love it, man. I love it. We got to get you over here for the Men's World Cup next year, and hopefully England at least get to the final.
Yeah,
At
we
least
could
get.
we could we could only dream,
I know y'all stress us. Yep. England's team stresses me out more than the US. Like y'all have, like US is like, okay, we get to quarters, I'm happy. Y'all are
Uh,
like finals or bust, championship or bust.
well, there's a very old phrase attributed to a very famous football manager here in the UK, which is called which goes, "It's the hope that kills you."
Oh,
And I think that's probably why you get stressed out more about England, because the hope and expectation is that we should win, and
yeah.
that's what kills you. Whereas, with all due respect to the US, I don't necessarily think you're going to be one of the favourites.
No,
So
we're not. We're not.
that's definitely something for us here in England that we
Yeah, I'm
face
excited.
constantly.
I'm excited, man. Well, definitely, Sam, man, it's always a pleasure to talk with you and hope to see you. If not in the East Coast next month, definitely over in England later this year. I'll be sure to include your contact information and a link to the website to the description of this podcast episode. But excited for what we'll accomplish together heading through 2025, but definitely beyond.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Tim. I really appreciate you having me on as a guest today. If anyone wants to reach out to me, they can do via email, LinkedIn, whatever. And yeah, just really excited for the journey, and appreciate all you're doing as well.
Most definitely, bro. For everyone else, man, thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of Walk with TLB. Definitely lock in with Sam again. His information will be in the description of the podcast episode, but also very active on LinkedIn. So do not hesitate to reach out, say hello, and see what y'all can accomplish together as well. Look forward to seeing y'all in future weeks as we continue talking more about the growing intersection of internationalization in sport. But as always, until then, walk with me.